Today, we're talking about taming a torrent. We are diving into a violent, chaotic, and yet somehow absolutely essential force of nature, one that engineers have learned to control, and one that protects nearly every major dam in the world from literally tearing itself apart. So let's start not with the solution, but with the problem itself. Let's talk about the incredible, almost unimaginable destructive power of water when it's released from a dam spillway. Just try to picture the sheer weight of an entire reservoir, all that water held back by a dam. That is a massive amount of stored potential energy. The second you open those floodgates, all of that potential energy gets converted into kinetic energy, and that creates this high-velocity jet of water that can tear apart solid rock. It can shred concrete if you just let it go unchecked. And that brings us to the main villain in our story today, a process called scour. I mean, this is exactly what it sounds like. That jet of water acts like a giant sandblaster, just scouring away the riverbed, digging away at the very foundation of the dam itself. So, preventing scour? That is priority number one for any engineer trying to build a safe, stable dam. So, how in the world do you stop this incredibly concentrated, destructive force? You can't just, put up another wall. No. Instead, engineers turn to this surprisingly violent and honestly kind of beautiful solution that nature itself provides. It is called a hydraulic jump, and you've probably seen a tiny version of this in your kitchen sink, actually. It's this really sudden, really turbulent transition where a fast, shallow flow of water just abruptly slams on the brakes and becomes a deep, slow flow. This jump is basically nature's emergency brake, and it gets rid of incredible amounts of energy in a really short distance. And what you're seeing in this diagram is exactly how it works. The super fast-moving water, that's point 1 over on the left, it literally runs into the slower water ahead of it and just trips over itself. This is what creates that intense, chaotic roller of turbulence that you see right there in the middle. And that turbulence, it's not just random chaos. It's the entire point of the whole thing. It's a super efficient way of converting energy. All of that churning and mixing is where the water's destructive kinetic energy gets safely turned into harmless heat and sound. And here's just how effective it is. Get this. Under the right conditions, a single hydraulic jump can burn off more than half of the water's incoming kinetic energy. It is a stunningly efficient process, just turning raw, destructive force into heat, all thanks to the laws of physics. Okay, so let's build on that because engineers can't just cross their fingers and hope a good jump happens. No, they have to be able to predict its behavior, its very personality, really, to make sure it's doing its job correctly and, most importantly, safely. And the way they do that is with a key metric called the Froude number. The easiest way to think of it is like a personality test for flowing water. It's a simple ratio, right, that tells an engineer if the flow is calm and slow or if it's fast and chaotic. And based on that one number, they can predict exactly what kind of hydraulic jump is about to happen. This classic diagram here from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation shows you the whole spectrum. At really low Froude numbers, you get a weak jump, not much happens. In that middle range, say from 4.5 to 9, that's the sweet spot. You get a good, stable jump. And then, at really high numbers, you get a strong jump, but it can be pretty rough. But pay attention to that little zone in between. This is the problem zone. If your Froude number is somewhere between about 2.5 and 4.5, you get what's called an oscillating jump. It's unstable, it's unpredictable, and it creates these huge rolling waves that just keep going downstream, damaging everything in their path. It is, frankly, an engineer's nightmare. So the mission is crystal clear, right? Engineers have to design their structures to either completely avoid this dangerous oscillating range, or if they're stuck with it, they have to figure out a way to tame it, to force the creation of a stable, predictable jump that does its job without causing a whole new set of problems. And that brings us right into the world of hydraulic engineering, where, believe me, they do not leave this powerful force to chance. They literally build a custom-designed arena to contain and control the jump. This arena is called a stilling basin. You can pretty much think of it as a heavily reinforced concrete skid pad for water. It is precisely engineered to force that hydraulic jump to happen exactly where it's safe and can be fully contained. And inside this basin, engineers use a whole toolkit of tricks. They've got chute blocks right at the entrance to split up the incoming jet. They've got these massive baffle piers on the floor to absorb impact and stir up even more turbulence. And then, at the very end, there's a raised end sill that helps create a back roller to keep the jump locked inside the basin. But there's another really clever technique that kind of works with the physics of the jump. Instead of just adding obstacles, what if you could dramatically increase the friction on the floor of the basin itself? Well, by lining the basin with big, rough boulders, engineers create intense friction at the bottom of the flow. And this helps the jump do its job much, much faster and in a way smaller space. And the result of that? The stilling basin can be up to 35% shorter. I mean, that is a massive savings in concrete and construction costs. And the benefits here go way beyond just cost. These rough beds, they also protect the concrete underneath from getting worn away. And because the structures themselves are smaller, they have less of an impact on the environment. They can even be designed to be more friendly for fish to pass through. It is an absolute win-win. So, the real takeaway here is that a hydraulic jump is just a perfect example of engineering ingenuity. It's about deeply understanding a violent, chaotic process in nature and then creating the perfect conditions to harness that violence, turning it into a predictable, life-saving tool that protects our most critical infrastructure. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. The hydraulic jump shows us the power of working with nature's physics instead of just trying to fight against it. So it makes you wonder, what other powerful forces are out there just waiting for us to understand them well enough to turn them from a threat into a tool? Thanks for watching.